I swear, Mom, I saw you do it. You killed Dad. Her voice cut through me like a knife. My own daughter, my precious Emily, stood in the courtroom pointing her trembling finger at me. The whole world froze as her words echoed, bouncing off the walls and drilling into my chest. My knees weakened, but I refused to fall. Not here. Not in front of the cameras, not in front of the jury, and not in front of the child I once gave everything for. I couldn't even see her face clearly anymore. I could only hear the rage in her tone. That's the cruel irony. I gave her my sight. I laid down on that operating table for hours, enduring pain and risking death so she could see again. And now, those very eyes I had given her were being used to destroy me. The gasps in the room drowned out my heartbeat. My husband's name, Michael, was whispered over and over again like a haunting ghost. A billionaire businessman, beloved by many, now dead in his own home. And his wife, me, was being accused of murdering him. By the very daughter who once clung to my hand and called me her hero. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but the words got stuck. All I could do was stare at her through my blurred vision and wonder, how did we get here? How did the girl I loved more than life itself turn into my executioner? Before I could answer, the judge's gavel slammed. The trial was underway. My fate was hanging by a thread. And that's when it all came rushing back. The love, the sacrifices, the betrayals that no one could see coming. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a wife, a mother, and now an accused murderer. But to understand how my daughter's deadly betrayal became my reality, you need to know the truth from the very beginning. It all started years ago, back when life was full of light, laughter, and hope. Back when Emily was only 12 years old. She was our miracle child. I had prayed for her after years of infertility, and when she finally came into our lives, I swore I would protect her from everything. Michael, my husband, adored her even more than I did. He was a strong, charming man who had built his empire from nothing. From luxury hotels to private jets, his name was respected in every corner of the country. But at home, he was just daddy to Emily and my rock to me. We lived in a mansion outside New York City, surrounded by gardens Emily loved to play in. She would run around barefoot, laughing, while Michael chased her across the lawn. Those were the happiest days of my life. I thought nothing could ever touch us. But then came the storm. One morning, Emily woke up screaming. She couldn't see. Her world had turned into shadows overnight. Doctors said it was a rare degenerative eye disease. We tried every treatment money could buy, every specialist across the globe. Nothing worked. My daughter, my sweet, innocent girl, was going blind. The day she broke down in my arms, begging, "Mommy, I don't want to live in darkness," I felt my soul shatter. That was when I made the decision that changed everything. I offered her my own sight. Doctors told me it was dangerous. The surgery would take hours. There was a chance I would never see again. Michael begged me not to do it, reminding me that Emily could still live a good life without vision. But I couldn't listen. I was her mother. My child's suffering was mine. If she had to live in light, then I would gladly embrace the dark. The surgery was grueling. I remember slipping in and out of consciousness, my body trembling as if the life was being drained out of me. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was Emily's face glowing with joy. Her eyes sparkled with life again. But I could no longer see her clearly. My world was now permanently blurred, clouded like fog on a cold winter morning. Still, I smiled, because her smile was worth it. For a while, life was good again. Emily thrived. She went to college, surrounded by friends, exploring the world I could no longer fully see. She would often tell me, "Mom, I see the world for both of us." And I believed her. But slowly, something began to change in her. The little girl who once hugged me tightly started pulling away. She became distant, secretive, and cold. I thought it was just part of growing up. I was wrong. The real turning point came the night Michael died. It was a stormy evening. The thunder roared, and the rain hammered the mansion windows. Michael had been working late in his office downstairs. I was in the kitchen making tea when I heard the crash, a loud, terrifying sound that shook the entire house. I ran as best as I could through the blur, calling his name. By the time I reached his office, Michael was on the floor, lifeless, his head bleeding. My scream pierced the night. I tried to call for help, but Emily was already there, her face pale, her voice shaking as she whispered, "Mom, what did you do?" I froze. Her words struck me harder than the sight of Michael's body. She looked at me as if I had killed him, and in that moment, I realized my nightmare was only beginning. Because Emily didn't just suspect me, she was going to turn the whole world against me. And she did. The police came. The mansion was sealed off. The newspapers called it the fall of a billionaire. But the dagger in my heart wasn't Michael's death. It was my daughter's betrayal. I thought she would stand by me, defend me. Instead, she stood in front of the detectives and said the words that would change my life forever. "I saw my mom kill my dad." And just like that, my world went dark again. That was only the beginning of my living nightmare. I had no idea how far my own daughter would go to destroy me, or the shocking secrets I was about to uncover. Because what I didn't know that night was that Michael's death was only the first step in a game of power, greed, and revenge that would tear our family apart. And the truth was far worse than I could have ever imagined. Suddenly, the sound of metal clanging shut behind me snapped me back to the present. I was in a cold, damp jail cell, accused of murdering the only man I ever loved. And the one person who could save me, my daughter, had chosen to bury me instead.
But why?
That question haunted me as I lay on the thin mattress, staring up at the ceiling with my blurred vision. Why would Emily accuse me? Was it grief?
Hatred?
Or something far darker? I didn't know then, but I was about to find out. And the answer would shake me to my very core. The courtroom was ice cold, yet sweat dripped down my back as I sat at the defendant's table. The smell of polished wood mixed with the tension of 100 eyes watching me, waiting for me to crumble. The prosecutor paced like a predator, waving his papers in the air. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is no ordinary case. We're not here because of a stranger's crime. We're here because a wife murdered her husband, and her daughter, her only daughter, saw it with her very own eyes." The crowd gasped, as if every word was gasoline feeding the fire. I wanted to shout, to scream that it wasn't true. But my throat was tight. My lawyer, a thin man named Daniel Wright, touched my arm.
"Stay calm, Sarah.
Let him finish." But how could I stay calm when the very girl I gave my sight to was sitting on the witness stand, ready to bury me alive? Emily looked perfect, her silky hair tucked behind her ear, her clear, bright eyes shining under the lights. My eyes. My gift. Yet her expression was cold, her lips pressed tight as she avoided looking at me. When the prosecutor asked her to recount what she saw, she swallowed hard, then said in a trembling voice, "I went into the office and saw my mom standing over my dad. He was already on the ground, bleeding, and in her hand." Her voice cracked, and the courtroom leaned forward, hungry for every detail. She had the heavy glass paperweight from his desk. My heart stopped. I remembered that paperweight. It was a gift I had given Michael on his 50th birthday, shaped like a globe. But I had never touched it that night. Never. Still, Emily's voice carried the weight of truth. Tears ran down her cheeks as she whispered, "She killed him." The words echoed like a curse. I wanted to stand and shout, "You liar! How could you say that?" But I sat frozen, my vision blurring, not from my condition but from tears. The jury members stared at me like I was already guilty. Michael's business partners whispered among themselves. The judge scribbled notes, his face unreadable. I closed my eyes and thought back to better days. I remembered Emily as a little girl, climbing into my lap after a nightmare, whispering, "Promise you'll never leave me, Mommy." And now, here she was, pushing me into the deepest darkness of my life.
Why?
That question burned in my soul. Why was she doing this? The trial dragged on for days. Evidence was stacked against me. They found my fingerprints in Michael's office. They found strands of my hair on his desk. They even claimed that my marriage had been under stress, hinting at jealousy, arguments, and secrets. But none of that mattered more than Emily's testimony. My own daughter's words cut deeper than any lawyer's accusations. During breaks, I tried to meet her eyes, silently begging her to remember the mother who gave her everything.
But she wouldn't look at me.
Until one afternoon, when the courtroom emptied for recess, and we were briefly alone, separated only by a guard. Emily finally turned her head, her eyes locking with mine.
And what I saw terrified me.
It wasn't grief. It wasn't pain. It was hunger. A sharp, cold hunger, like someone who had tasted power and wanted more. She leaned forward slightly, her lips barely moving, but I read the words as if she screamed them. You shouldn't have survived that surgery. My breath caught. What did she mean? My stomach churned as the realization dawned on me. Maybe Emily hadn't just turned against me after Michael's death. Maybe she had been planning this all along. That night in my jail cell, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing back to Michael's empire. Billions in assets, hotels, airlines, estates scattered across the globe. His will had always been clear. If anything happened to him, everything would go to Emily. But only under one condition: if Sarah, his wife, wasn't alive to share it. The memory hit me like a truck. Michael had explained it to me once, years ago. It's just protection, Sarah. If I die and you're gone too, everything will be hers. But if you're alive, it'll be split between you both. Could it be? Could my daughter have accused me to erase me from the picture? To own everything alone? The thought made my blood run cold. The next day in court, my lawyer tried to fight back. He brought up the inconsistencies in Emily's testimony, pointing out how she claimed to see me holding the paperweight, but the police had found no blood on it. The judge seemed to consider it, but the jury's eyes were still locked on Emily, as if she were a saint. And then came the bombshell. The prosecutor announced he had new evidence. The court hushed as he held up a flash drive. Surveillance footage from the night of the incident. My heart dropped into my stomach. Cameras? We had security cameras in the mansion, yes, but I hadn't checked them. I had been too blinded by grief. The footage flickered on the screen. The grainy black and white image showed the hallway outside Michael's office. My blurred eyes struggled to focus, but even I could see it, someone entering the office just minutes before the crash. The shape of the figure was clear. The hair, the height, the walk. The courtroom gasped. It was me. I stared at the screen, numb. The jury turned toward me, their eyes wide with horror. My lawyer objected, shouting that the footage could be manipulated. But I knew the damage was done. Because now, it wasn't just Emily's word against mine. The world believed it saw me walk into that office and kill my husband. But here's the truth. The one thing I knew deep in my bones: I had never entered that office. And if that wasn't me in the footage, then who was it? The chapter of lies and betrayal had just reached its darkest twist. Someone was framing me. Someone was playing a deadly game. And I was trapped in the middle of it. And then, as if fate wanted to crush me even more, the judge announced his decision. Bail denied. The defendant will remain in custody until trial resumes. The guards grabbed my arms, pulling me up from the table. As I was dragged away, I turned one last time toward Emily. She was smiling. Not a nervous smile. Not a sad smile. A cold, triumphant smile. That's when I knew this wasn't just betrayal. This was war. The sound of the prison gates clanging shut echoed in my chest like a death sentence. The concrete walls seemed to press in closer every day. My cell was small, damp, and reeked of bleach and fear. I had traded a mansion filled with light for a cage of shadows. The guards barely looked at me anymore. To them, I was just another criminal. But I wasn't like the others. I hadn't killed my husband. I was innocent. Yet no one believed me. Not even my own daughter. Every night, I lay awake on the hard mattress, replaying Emily's smile in my head. That smile haunted me more than Michael's death. Because it told me one undeniable truth. My daughter wanted me destroyed.
But why?
One morning, my lawyer Daniel came to visit. He slid into the cold metal chair across from me, his eyes heavy with worry. "Sarah," he whispered, leaning close so the guards wouldn't hear. "Something's off about this case. The footage doesn't match the timestamps. And the only copy came directly from your husband's personal security system." I frowned. "Michael's system?" Daniel nodded.
Yes.
"Which means someone had access to it before it was given to the police." A chill ran through me. There were only 3 people with access to that security system: Michael, myself, and Emily. I wanted to dismiss the thought. I wanted to believe my daughter wouldn't go so far. But deep down, a terrible suspicion was growing like a poisonous vine in my heart. Days turned into weeks, and the trial moved forward. Every headline screamed my guilt. "Billionaire's wife turns killer." Reporters painted me as a jealous wife, bitter about being left out of Michael's empire. But in the shadows of the courtroom, I began noticing something odd. Emily never cried anymore. Not real tears.
Not the kind she shed when she was a child.
Instead, she carried herself with a calmness, almost a confidence, as though she was already the queen of an empire not yet hers. And then one day, as she left the courtroom surrounded by reporters, I overheard her say, "Dad always wanted me to take over everything. Now I finally can." Her words stabbed me deeper than any blade. That night, I dreamed of the surgery. I remembered Emily's trembling hand clutching mine before they wheeled me into the operating room. She was so scared, so fragile. I whispered, "Don't worry, baby. Mommy's got you. I'll give you my sight if I have to." And I did. But now, lying in my prison bunk, I realized something chilling. What if Emily had wanted more than just my sight? The following day, Daniel returned with news that shook me. "Sarah," he said, placing a folder on the table. "Michael recently changed his will." I stiffened. "What do you mean changed?" Daniel opened the folder and pointed to the papers inside. "He updated it 2 months before his death. The new terms are unusual. If you are convicted of his murder, all assets, every hotel, jet, and bank account, automatically transfer to Emily. No waiting, no disputes." My blood turned to ice. "Convicted?" He actually put that in. "Yes," Daniel said grimly, almost as if he anticipated this exact scenario. I pressed my hands to my face, my heart hammering. It didn't make sense. Michael loved me. He trusted me. Why would he add a clause that made it so easy to erase me? Unless he hadn't added it willingly. The next time I saw Emily, she was sitting in the witness box again. She was calm, collected, her voice steady as she answered every question the prosecutor asked. She looked more like a polished businesswoman than a grieving daughter. As I studied her, I noticed something strange. Her answers weren't just rehearsed. They were perfect. Almost too perfect. And then it hit me. She wasn't just accusing me to punish me. She was performing, playing a role. But for who? That evening, back in my cell, Daniel returned with yet another shock. His voice dropped as he whispered, "Sarah, we've uncovered something." Michael had been preparing to expose someone. A betrayal. A fraud within his empire. But before he could act, he was killed. My heart stopped.
Who?
Daniel hesitated, his face pale. "I don't know yet. But I do know this. Emily was meeting with some of your husband's business rivals weeks before his death." The world tilted around me. Emily? My Emily? Meeting with Michael's enemies? I gripped the table, my knuckles white. "Are you saying she might have?" Daniel cut me off. "I can't prove anything. Not yet. But Sarah, someone wanted Michael gone. And someone wants you silenced." My breath came in short gasps. It was worse than I thought. Emily wasn't just trying to erase me. She was working with forces far darker than I could imagine. The very next day, the trial took another deadly turn. The prosecutor announced he had a new witness. The door swung open, and my blood froze. It was one of Michael's closest business partners, Thomas Gray. A powerful, ruthless man who had always hovered around our family like a shadow. He walked to the stand, his expensive suit gleaming under the lights. His eyes met mine briefly, and in that split second, I saw it, cold calculation. He cleared his throat and said, "I saw Sarah threatening Michael weeks before his death. She told him if he didn't give her control of his assets, she would take matters into her own hands." The courtroom erupted in gasps. My lawyer objected furiously, but the damage was already done. And then, like a blade slicing through my soul, Thomas turned his gaze toward Emily. And she smiled back at him. In that moment, I realized the unthinkable. This wasn't just Emily's betrayal. She wasn't acting alone. She had aligned herself with Michael's enemies, and together, they had set me up.
But why?
What could be so powerful, so tempting, that my own daughter would sell her soul and sacrifice me? Before I could even process it, the judge banged his gavel, silencing the chaos. "The court will reconvene tomorrow. But let me be clear, this evidence is damning." The guards grabbed me, dragging me out of the courtroom. My legs buckled, but I forced myself to stand tall. Because as Thomas and Emily exchanged another knowing glance, one horrifying truth struck me like lightning. This wasn't just about Michael's death. It was about control of everything. And Emily was willing to destroy me to get it. But what I didn't know then was that the next piece of evidence would not just shake the courtroom. It would uncover a secret about Michael's death so shocking, it would tear apart everything I thought I knew. And it would reveal the true monster in our family. The courtroom was silent the next morning, but the silence wasn't peace. It was the silence before a storm. The judge's gavel echoed like thunder as the trial resumed, and I could feel the walls closing in. I sat stiffly at the defendant's table, my hands shaking under the wood where no one could see. My blurred vision made everything hazy, but I could still sense the eyes drilling into me, reporters scribbling, jurors whispering, strangers already certain of my guilt. And then there was Emily. She sat beside Thomas Gray, her face calm, almost regal, as if she already owned the courtroom. She wasn't my daughter anymore. She was a stranger wearing my child's face. Daniel leaned close, his whisper sharp in my ear. "Sarah, I think I've found something." My breath hitched. "What?" He slid a piece of paper under the table so the guards wouldn't see. It was a medical report. "This is from the coroner's office. Official cause of death: blunt force trauma. But look here, traces of a chemical in his blood. A paralytic." I stared at him, my heart racing. "What does that mean?" Daniel's eyes darkened. "It means Michael was drugged before he died. He didn't just fall or collapse. Someone wanted him helpless. And they made sure of it." My pulse roared in my ears. Drugged? That changed everything. But who had access to him that night? Who could have slipped something into his drink? I turned my head toward Emily. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. My stomach twisted as the unthinkable thought crept in. Could my daughter have poisoned her father? The prosecutor called Thomas Gray to the stand again. His voice was smooth, practiced, dripping with venom. "Michael confided in me," he said firmly, "that Sarah had grown resentful. She was losing her sight, losing her influence, and feared Emily would love him more than her. She told me if she couldn't have him, no one could."
Lies.
All of it. My throat ached from holding back the scream building inside. Daniel jumped up. "Objection. Hearsay." The judge considered, then nodded. "Sustained. The jury will disregard." But I knew they wouldn't disregard. Not really. Lies had a way of clinging to the truth, staining it forever. And then, something unexpected happened. Daniel requested the coroner himself to testify. A heavy-set man with glasses shuffled to the stand, carrying his files. Daniel's voice was steady but urgent. "Doctor, please confirm, was there a foreign substance in Michael Mitchell's system the night he died?" The doctor nodded.
"Yes."
"A paralytic agent, the kind that can immobilize a person within minutes. Traces were found in his bloodstream." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The prosecutor shot up, trying to bury the statement, but the damage was done. For the first time, the jury's eyes shifted, not just to me, but to Emily. That night, I couldn't stop shaking. Someone else had been in that house. Someone else had drugged Michael. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as powerless as I thought. But then the fear returned. If Emily wasn't just testifying out of grief, if she was truly involved, then I was staring at a monster of my own making. A few days later, Daniel brought me another file. His face was pale, his hands trembling. "Sarah," he whispered, "this changes everything." He opened the folder to reveal bank records, massive transfers of money, hidden accounts under Emily's name. Millions moved quietly, just days before Michael's death. I stared at the numbers, disbelief choking me. She stole from him? Daniel shook his head.
No.
She was being paid.
Paid.
I whispered. By who? His eyes flicked to the name on the records. My stomach turned as I read it. Thomas Gray. The next day in court, Emily was called back to the stand. Her hands were steady, her voice calm as she answered every question. But I could see it now. Underneath the poise was calculation. She was protecting herself, protecting Thomas. And then, in a moment that made my blood run cold, she looked directly at me and smiled. Not the smile of a daughter, the smile of a predator. I thought the worst had already happened, but I was wrong, because later that evening, as I sat in my cell, a guard approached. "Mitchell, you've got a visitor." Confused, I followed him into the small visitation room. The door opened, and my knees nearly gave out. It wasn't Daniel. It wasn't family. It was Thomas Gray. He sat there waiting for me, his expensive suit flawless, his smirk sharp enough to cut glass. "Hello, Sarah," he said softly, his voice smooth as silk. "It's time we had a little chat. Off the record." The guard left us alone. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared at him. "What do you want?" I demanded. His smile widened. "Simple. You take the fall. You rot in here quietly. And Emily gets everything." I gritted my teeth. "And if I don't?" Thomas leaned forward, his eyes glittering with menace. "Then I release proof that Emily was in on it from the start. She'll go down with you. And I don't think you're ready to destroy your little girl, are you?" My stomach twisted. He knew my weakness. No matter what Emily had done, she was still my child. He leaned back casually, as if he owned the world. "So, Sarah, what will it be? Your freedom or your daughter's?" The door slammed shut behind him, leaving me trembling in silence. And in that moment, I realized I was trapped in a game I could never win. Because if I fought for the truth, I might destroy Emily. And if I stayed silent, I would lose myself forever. But then another thought struck me, a thought so dangerous, so wild, I almost didn't dare believe it. What if Emily wasn't just a pawn? What if she had orchestrated everything from the very start? That question burned in my mind as I lay in the dark cell, my hands gripping the thin blanket. And just as sleep finally threatened to take me, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. A guard appeared at my door, his voice sharp. "Mitchell, wake up. There's been an incident." My heart stopped. "What incident?" His jaw tightened. "It's your daughter." I shot to my feet, gripping the bars. "What happened to Emily?" The guard's eyes darkened. "She's in the hospital. Someone tried to kill her." And just like that, the world flipped upside down again. The sirens echoed in my head, even though I wasn't inside the ambulance. I was trapped in my cell, pacing like a caged animal, my mind burning with questions. Someone tried to kill Emily. My daughter, the very one who accused me, who betrayed me, was now lying in a hospital bed fighting for her life. The guards hadn't told me how or why or who. Just those awful words. Someone tried to kill her. And in that moment, despite everything, my heart betrayed me. Because underneath all the pain, all the anger, she was still my baby girl. I had given her my sight. I had given her my life. And now I might lose her forever. 2 days later, I was escorted to the hospital under heavy guard. My wrists were cuffed, chains rattling as I walked through white hallways that smelled of disinfectant and fear. Nurses stared. Doctors whispered. When I entered Emily's room, my knees almost buckled. She was pale, tubes running into her arms, monitors beeping steadily beside her. Her beautiful hair was tangled on the pillow, her lips cracked and dry. She looked fragile, like the little girl who used to crawl into my lap after nightmares. I wanted to run to her, to cradle her, to whisper, "Mommy's here." But the chains held me back. Her eyes flickered open, and for a second, I saw something I hadn't seen in years: fear. Real fear. "Mom," her voice was raspy, broken. "They tried to finish me." Tears blurred my vision. I leaned forward as far as the cuffs allowed. "Who, Emily? Who did this to you?" Her lips trembled. She glanced toward the door, then back at me. And then, barely audible, she whispered, "Thomas." The name hit me like a gunshot. Thomas Gray. The man who sat in court smiling as he testified against me. The man who visited me in prison to deliver threats. The man who held the strings of Michael's empire in his fists. I clenched my jaw, ball rising in my throat. He had used Emily, manipulated her, maybe even promised her the world. And when she was no longer useful, he tried to erase her, just like he tried to erase me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of something dangerous in my chest. Not just fear, not just grief, but rage. Emily closed her eyes, her voice faint. "Mom, I didn't know he would." Her words trailed off as the monitors beeped faster. Nurses rushed in, pushing me back, shouting for me to leave. I stood there frozen, my wrists in chains, watching helplessly as my daughter's body convulsed on the bed. The last thing I heard before they shoved me out was her voice crying, "I'm sorry, Mom." The door slammed shut. Back in my cell, I couldn't stop shaking. My daughter had betrayed me, yes. She had tried to destroy me. But now she was in danger too, and the only person who could protect her was me. I lay awake that night, a storm brewing in my chest. If Thomas was behind this, then he was more dangerous than I ever imagined. He wasn't just after Michael's empire. He was silencing everyone who could expose him. And if Emily was his next target, then so was I. The next morning, Daniel burst into the visiting room, his face pale. "Sarah," he said breathlessly, "you're not going to believe this. The hospital was attacked last night." My blood turned to ice. "What?" He swallowed hard. "Someone broke into Emily's room. They cut the power. The security cameras went offline for 10 minutes. When the lights came back, Emily was gone." The world spun around me. My knees gave out, and I gripped the table to steady myself. "Gone," I whispered. Daniel nodded grimly. "She's missing. The police don't know if she was kidnapped, or if she left with them willingly." My chest heaved, panic clawing at me. No, 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 no. She wouldn't, she couldn't. But deep down, I wasn't sure anymore. Had Thomas finally taken her? Or had Emily chosen to vanish into the shadows with him? The courtroom was chaos when the news broke. The prosecution tried to spin it, painting Emily as a frightened daughter hiding from her murderous mother. The media swallowed the story whole. But I knew the truth. This wasn't Emily running from me. This was Thomas tightening his grip. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. Emily might not just be his victim. She might be his partner. That night in my cell, I whispered to the dark, "If you hurt her, Thomas, I swear I'll burn your empire to the ground." But the walls gave me no answer. Only silence. 2 weeks passed before the next shock arrived. Daniel entered the prison, his hands shaking as he dropped a manila envelope on the table. Inside was a photograph. My blood froze. It was Emily, dressed in a sleek black dress, standing beside Thomas Gray. Her hand rested on his arm. Her smile was wide, confident, and terrifyingly familiar. On the bottom of the photograph, in bold ink, were the words, "The new queen has arrived." The room tilted. My stomach churned. It wasn't kidnapping. It wasn't fear. Emily had chosen this. She wasn't his victim. She was his heir. And as I stared at that photograph, chains rattling against the table, one horrifying truth set my soul on fire. My daughter didn't just betray me. She was building an empire with the man who killed her father. But what I didn't know then was that Emily's betrayal was only the beginning. Because the next twist would put me face to face with a secret about Michael's death that would shatter everything. The photograph of Emily on Thomas's arm haunted me every night. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the image in my head, her smile, her confidence, the way she looked like she had already buried the girl I once knew. But Daniel wasn't done with me yet. 2 weeks after that picture surfaced, he came into the prison looking more disturbed than I'd ever seen him. His hands shook as he placed a recorder on the table between us. "You need to hear this," he whispered. He pressed play. At first, all I heard was static. Then a voice came through, Thomas Gray's deep, smug tone. "She finally knows," he said. "She knows her father wasn't the saint she thought. She knows I was the one who showed her the truth. And now she's mine. Mine to shape. Mine to rule beside me." And then another voice. My heart dropped. It was Emily. "You're right," she said softly. "My mother's weak. She gave up her eyes for me, and I still despise her. She took away the only man I truly loved, Dad. And for that, she deserves nothing but darkness. When I inherit everything, I'll make sure she never sees freedom again." My chest tightened so hard I thought I would pass out. She hated me, truly hated me. But the words that followed destroyed me in a way no chains ever could. "Thomas," Emily whispered, "tell me again how you killed him. I want to hear it." And then, with no shame, no hesitation, Thomas admitted it. "I slid his brakes that night. Michael never saw it coming. And the best part? Your mother will rot in prison for it." Emily laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not a forced one. A laugh of delight. The recorder clicked off. I sat frozen, trembling from head to toe, my blind eyes wet with tears I didn't even feel fall. Michael hadn't died in some tragic accident. He hadn't been murdered by my hands. He had been killed by Thomas. And my daughter knew. That night, I lay awake in my cell, fury boiling inside me. I had given Emily my sight. I had carried her for 9 months, raised her, loved her, and bled for her. And this was how she repaid me, by siding with the man who murdered her father, the man who framed me, the man who tried to erase me. I swore to myself then. I would not die in chains. I would not let Thomas and Emily rise as king and queen of an empire built on lies and blood. I would take everything back, even if it killed me. A month later, the trial reached its peak. The prosecution brought out their surprise witness. The door opened. My breath caught. It was Emily. She walked into that courtroom in a sleek black suit, her hair flawless, her eyes glittering with icy confidence.
She didn't look at me.
Not once. She walked past me like I was nothing more than a ghost. When she took the stand, her voice was calm, controlled, almost rehearsed. "My mother killed my father," she said coldly. "And I'll prove it." Every word she spoke cut into me like knives. She told stories twisted into lies, half-truths laced with venom. And the jury listened. They nodded. They believed her. The girl I had given everything to was now my executioner. And then came the breaking point. The prosecution revealed new evidence, documents showing Michael had quietly transferred the majority of his assets into a trust for Emily, just weeks before his death. The room gasped. The trust was worth billions. And if I was convicted, Emily wouldn't just inherit her father's empire, she would inherit it without me in the way. It all clicked. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was strategic. Emily didn't just hate me. She wanted me gone forever, so she could reign unchallenged. That night, back in my cell, I collapsed on the floor, broken. I had given her sight. I had given her freedom. And in return, she had given me chains. But as I lay there, something inside me hardened. She thought she had won. She thought she had buried me. But she had underestimated one thing: a mother's fury. The next day in court, as Emily prepared to testify again, Daniel slipped me a folded piece of paper under the table. On it was one sentence. "We have Thomas's confession recorded." My pulse raced. My hands trembled. For the first time, I felt hope flicker in my chest. But before I could even breathe, Before the defense could rise, the courtroom doors burst open. A man stumbled in, covered in blood. It was one of Thomas's bodyguards. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Thomas is dead." The entire courtroom erupted in chaos. I froze, my blood running cold. Dead? Thomas, the monster who killed my husband, the man who owned my daughter, was gone? Then the bodyguard's words cut through the noise like a blade. "It was her," he gasped, pointing a trembling finger across the room. His hand shook. His voice broke. "It was Emily. She killed him." The room fell into stunned silence. All eyes turned to my daughter. And for the first time, Emily didn't look cold, or confident, or untouchable. She looked exactly how I felt inside. Exposed. And as the judge slammed his gavel, calling for order, one terrifying thought filled my mind. My daughter hadn't just betrayed me. She had become me.